When they asked me to come here today and talk to you about authenticity, I thought for a minute that maybe I wasn't the right person to do it, because I have a confession to make. I am a fake. I am a fraud. I am an imposter. And if the truth be told, I would imagine that you also are a fake and a fraud and an imposter. But you see, it isn't our fault. Since the beginning of time, we've been told that as leaders, what we need to do is we need to fake it. Wait a minute, how's that go? We need to fake it until we make it. That's right. Fake it until we make it, as though somehow or another leadership skills arise out of our pretending or play acting a part. And all we need to do is to act as though we are successful, and then as leaders we will become successful. The only problem with that is that it is fundamentally, undeniably wrong. That we find ourselves as leaders caught in this authenticity paradox. What we have is we have these twin needs that are completely incompatible. On this side, what we need is we need to be seen as the perfect, polished professional. But on the other side, what we need is we need to be seen, we need to be connected deeply and importantly in a human way with our team. But those two needs are incompatible. They cannot possibly exist at the same time. As a matter of fact, the more perfect that we seem to our teams, the less chance they have to connect with us. And why would that be? Why would that be? Is because as humans, what we need is we need to connect with people who are similar to us, who are like us. As a matter of fact, the more like us they are, the easier it is for them to connect with us. Humans as a species have always advanced by finding people who share our same beliefs and our same values, and then they'll have our backs if something goes wrong. That's what we're looking for. And so when we come across to our teams as being these perfect, polished professionals, they don't have a chance to connect with us. All of us are looking for people who are similar to us, and those are the people that we connect with. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were just in Amsterdam, and we had a lovely trip. We were on a train in Amsterdam, and we heard somebody with an American accent. And not just an American accent, but a Southern American accent. Somewhere on this train, we heard this man say, Amsterdam, Amsterdam. And we had to get up and we had to go find whoever owns this accent. And we found this lovely couple named Butch and Ida, who are from the American state of Georgia. Now, we're from Florida, they're from Georgia, and so it's like we're neighbors. And so we became immediately drawn to them. We became immediate friends. You know, because we know who they are. We know what their beliefs and their likes and their dislikes, and we've got their back immediately, right away. What do we know about Butch and Ida? I can tell you, guaranteed, even though we didn't ask them, that Butch and Ida, if they're from Florida or they're from Georgia, chances are they like cornbread and buttermilk biscuits and sweet tea, because we do as well. And what is it they dislike? They dislike the traffic in downtown Atlanta and the Crimson Tide, Alabama football team. See, I'm kidding, but it's the truth, is that you look for people who are just like us. And so as we try to move our staff from being these money-driven, disengaged people to these mission-driven and very engaged people, what we find is that right there in the middle, what we need is we need for them to have a sense of belonging. They need to find a sense that they are important here. One of the most important questions that Gallup asks employees is, do you have a best friend at work? The absence of a best friend at work means you are disengaged. Now, as leaders, of course, are we perfect? Well, of course not. I mean, not even close, right? I mean, as I go around the country and I talk to leaders, the very first thing they will tell me about is they will tell me about the times that they came up short, the times that they tried something and it failed, their failures, and they're very much aware of the times that they have struggled. But they don't get up in front of their teams and talk about that. You know, they keep that struggle to themselves. But I tell you what, this is why it matters. 70% of American workers are disengaged. Disengaged, disgruntled, unsatisfied workers, they are more likely to leave, they're more likely to, they're less productive, they're less creative, and they're more likely to run our customers off. And that gets very expensive. They put the price of the disengaged worker at $500 billion with a B dollars a year in lost productivity every year. Now, I always thought that speaking skills, as a speaking coach, I thought that speaking skills would have to be part of the answer. Because the average leader spends 80% of their time communicating. So if we made them better communicators, then they would be better leaders of their team, and then we would have fewer disengaged workers, right? Unfortunately, this is not proven to be the case. As a matter of fact, the more perfect and polished and everything that we seem, the more disengaged they become. But I do see moments. I see this particular moment when this leader at this time, under this circumstance, all of a sudden gets up and speaks, and he connects, or she connects, in a way that matters in a deep and important way. But why that leader? Why that leader? Why this person at this time? Why did they cut through when every other one has fallen flat? The answer is this. When employees feel most connected to their supervisor is the moment when their supervisor talks about their own flaws. In other words, authenticity and leadership go hand in hand. See, in this world, there is just so much fake. We have fake Rolexes and fake purses and fake this and fake that. And, and if you're talking about, like if you have fake eyelashes or if you've got tinted contact lenses, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is fake people. With fake people, all of a sudden, it matters. With fake people, we risk too much. Now, in order to really get this authenticity paradox, let me tell you a story. Now, this is a true story. I've changed a few of the details because this is a true story that's still going on. But I'll change a couple of the details to not embarrass anybody, but this is the story. And what happens is this. There's an 87-year-old man in Abilene, Texas, who lives by himself. He has buried 2 wives, and his children have children of their own. And he is lonely and alone. He spends most of his night watching TV. He watches a lot of Golden Girl marathons. And what he wants is what we all want, and that is to have a deep and meaningful connection with someone. Now, no one's exactly sure how the next step happened, but as far as anybody in the family can tell, they think that the grandson may have taught his grandfather, this 87-year-old man, the idea of how to find love online. And so the 87-year-old grandfather did what any 87-year-old grandfather might do, is he went online and created a dating account at a dating website called FoxyCuties.com. And then they asked him a screen name, and so he picked Sparky because he was once an electrician. And then they asked him what his age was, and instead of being 87, he made himself 52. And then they asked him, he upgraded his apparent wealth a little bit by standing in front of a Porsche 911 that happened to be parked in front of the Piggly Wiggly one day when he was there picking up the prescription. And then he posted all that, and he sat back and he waited. Much to everyone's surprise, including his very embarrassed family, Sparky ended up being a bit of a hit. Young women in their 20s and 30s could not wait to meet Sparky, the 52-year-old who looked 87. And Sparky, the man who had spent so many evenings staring at Betty White, was suddenly the toast of the tiny hottie universe. And before the family could step in and do something, Sparky did meet a few of them. Kitty and Lola wanted to meet him at the same time, and so they met at the Golden Corral, and they had a pretty good date. Now, somewhere around the cash register, in the flurry of dangerously high heels and Gucci perfume, Sparky misplaced his credit card. But the date ended with a kiss from both women in the parking lot, and Sparky went home a happy man until he got home. And when he got home, the credit card company was on the phone, and the credit card company said suspicious activity, and they closed his account, but not before Kitty and Lola had drained a good chunk of his savings. Now, the reason I tell you this story is contained in Sparky's story is all of the pieces of the authenticity paradox. Nobody in our story was telling the truth. Sparky wasn't rich, and he wasn't 52, and the ladies weren't interested in him for anything other than his bank account, and they were all being fake. And fake is a terrible foundation for connection. The more fake we are, the less possibility that we have for actual human connection. Now, I ask you, what would have happened? What would have happened if Sparky had gone to a more appropriate dating website and if he'd just told the truth? What if he'd been authentic? What if he'd have said, I'm old, I'm lonely, I spend too much time by myself? Don't you think he could have found other people who said, yes, Sparky, that's my story. A lot of older women would have gone on there and say, I get what you're talking about. That's the way I feel. And he might have had a chance for actual connection. See, in a world where so much is fake, it is that authentic moment that cuts through like a knife. It cuts through, and all of a sudden, people sit up and pay attention, and all of a sudden, they connect because we're being real, and they sense it. I'll give you a couple of examples. In 2009, Domino's Pizza had a quality problem. They had done a survey, they sent the survey out, and the survey came back, and actually people pretty much hated their pizza. They had a quality problem. People came back and they said things like, the crust tastes like cardboard, the sauce tastes like ketchup. Some people even said, I'd rather eat the box it came in than to eat your pizza. Now, the CEO, Patrick Doyle, could have hidden those comments away, but he didn't. What he did instead was he featured those comments, and he actually bought full-page ads in major newspapers, and he put those comments up top. Crust tastes like cardboard. Sauce tastes like ketchup. And then underneath that, he said, we heard you, and we're working on it, and please give us another chance. Did that work? It worked marvelously. Since 2009, Domino's Pizza stock has shot up 600%. Domino's they grew faster than Apple and Amazon and McDonald's. They're now worth $12 billion. See, we connect with the pizza guy who just wants to make a better pizza. If he's struggling, we understand because sometimes we struggle as well. His struggle becomes our struggle. We connect with the person who's struggling because we also struggle. Do you ever struggle? Of course we do. We all do. This is Jenna Kutcher. Jenna Kutcher is a wedding photographer and a blogger, a very successful blogger. And this is her and her husband on vacation in Hawaii. Now, when she posted this photograph on her blog, something unexpected happened. People went on her blog. Now, you have to understand this. This is her blog, and these are her fans, her subscribers, went on her blog, and they said the meanest things in the world. Like, how does a woman that looks like you get a man that looks like that? Now, can you imagine being fat-shamed on your own blog by your own fans? Now, it would have been understandable if Jenna had hidden those comments. It would have been understandable if she had hit the delete button and just moved on, but instead she said, nope, and she featured those comments, and she said, let's just talk about this. And she talked about fat shaming, and she talked about being what she calls a curvy girl, and she talked about how sometimes you will stand next to somebody because of the way they look and because of the way you look, all of a sudden you don't feel like you look good anymore, and all of a sudden you have self-esteem issues, and she talked about this, and everybody said, yes, Jenna, that's the way I feel. You're telling my story. That's exactly how I feel all the time. Do we ever have self-esteem issues? Of course we do. We all do. We struggle. That's something we all struggle with. And because she was deeply flawed and human and talked about it, we felt connected to her. Now, my story has, thankfully, nothing to do with anyone taking their shirts off. That would not be pretty. But I was a young leader in an organization. I was new in this organization. I was a young leader, changed to this organization, and they put me in charge of a department. And my job, one of the first things I was to do was to create revenue projections and send them away to corporate. So I did that. Revenue projections, sent them away to corporate. Now, those of you that work in corporate understand how this works. Once you send something to corporate, there's no takebacks. No takebacks. Nope. You send it. You can't call up and say, oopsie, let me redo that. And so I had done that. I'd sent this away, and then I had a team meeting, had all my people around in a team meeting, and one of the guys in the back is doing math in the corner of his page. And then he looks up at me in horror, and he says, Daniel, did you know that your math is off? Of course I didn't know my math was off. I wouldn't have sent it if I knew my math was off. But he said, look, it's not just a little bit off. It was almost $200,000 off. That is a colossal mistake. That is a massive mistake. That is a fireable mistake. And I'm sure that my staff is looking at me and saying, Where do they get these leaders from? Really? They get a leader in here that doesn't even have the ability to do simple math. My authentic moment went like this. I confessed. I stood up, and I'll confess to you right now. I can't do math. I mean, I can't do math at all. I know people say that. People just in the hallway, they'll say, oh yeah, I can't do math. But I mean, I cannot do math, even a little bit. If you can't read, they say you're illiterate. But the word for if you can't do any calculations in your head, you're innumerate. And that's me. I can't do any calculations at all. And even with a calculator, I'll punch the numbers in and then look at that number, and I can't tell if that number is right or if it's off or if it's way the heck off. I have no way of knowing. None of that makes sense to me. And always before, what I had done is I had a cheat. I had a workaround. I could hand this to somebody else and say, Deborah, would you look at that? And then she would correct my mistakes. But because I was new in this organization, I didn't have that cheat or that workaround. My staff looked at me for a few minutes. And then they said, okay, well, let's do this. And what they did is they opened up all of their finances for the following year. And they said, how are we going to fix this? And they began doing this. You've probably done this yourself, where you steal from, you rob Peter and you pay Paul. And you move that number there and that number there and that number there. And then you subtract and you divide by 7 or whatever it may be. But after several hours of work, they corrected my mistake. And they high-fived and they hugged. And in that moment, my authentic moment built that team. All of a sudden, they were a team they never had been before. And they saved my job. And it was my authenticity that made that happen. The message, I think, is this, is that imperfection doesn't disqualify us from being leaders. It makes us infinitely more qualified. When we as leaders talk about our imperfections, like we put a sign out front that says, imperfect people are welcome. And it's in that moment, in that authentic moment where people can be just human, they can be real, and they can take chances, and they can respond to change in a more real and human way. Now I have one more confession to make. I think when they invited me here to talk about the authenticity paradox, they thought that at this point I would stop and I would give you some wisdom, that maybe I have a 7-step process for becoming a more authentic leader. But I have to confess, I don't have that. For me, the authenticity paradox continues to be a series of questions and not a list of answers. Now, I know it works. I see it all the time. I see it when my leaders that I work with, when they go out and they become more, they just tell the truth and they just talk about their own flaws. All of a sudden, they connect in a way they never have before. But I have to say that this is not the end of the answer. That it should be the beginning of a conversation. What I would love for this talk to spur is that we begin having a conversation with our staff about being authentic, that we begin having a conversation in our boardroom about being authentic. Because sometimes when I think about that leader, sometimes when I think about that disengaged worker, I think about that disengaged worker and I think, well, what if the problem isn't with them at all? What if when they showed up and they were eager and ready and eager to work, that we were fake and phony and inauthentic, and we were the ones who turned them off and not the other way around? And what if the answer isn't creating more plastic, perfect, and inevitably fake leaders? What if the answer is that we all just need to learn to be more authentic, to be more human, warts and all? Thank you.